Hello and welcome. Let's look into the much anticipated transit of Neptune moving into Aries on March the 30th. But first, before we go forward, we're going to have to go back. Truthfully, I had overlooked this particular transit. I had heard a lot about it, but until I did my weekly update for this week, I'm recording it on the week of the 24th of March, I started to realize something very interesting. And then all of a sudden, the dots began to connect. And this actually is quite significant with regards to our collective path, with regards to what we've been experiencing. I'm sure a lot of you watching this, myself included, what you have gone through perhaps over the last, we'll say 14 years or so, but specifically 10 and then the last 5, as I'm sure many of you out there have been going through significant shifts and awakenings of consciousness and healing and transformation. So this specific planet previously in Pisces played a big role in what I'm about to talk about. So this is going to be all about connecting the dots, looking back at what happened and why you have been feeling the way you've been feeling, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, and maybe for some of us even longer, and where it might be taking you. So let's go back in time first. Since 2011, Neptune has been in Pisces, and I'm going to get into the gradual shift in consciousness that it had actually created. Neptune is Pisces' ruling planet. It is the planet of spirituality, of dreams, of the unknown, of what lies beneath the surface. So Neptune being in Pisces naturally allowed for a greater depth of emotional awareness and shifting and going into some of the illusions, some of the dreams, and of course, our emotional self. And with that, we get to connect with our higher self, with the ethereal, with the spiritual, with the unknown. So back in 2011, you may have gone through a shift, or it could have been gradual over time because this is a slow moving transit. Over time, you could have developed greater spiritual interests. You could have started to go into healing practices and healing modalities and at least trying it out and seeing what spirituality is all about. So even looking back at my time, I definitely had become more involved about 10 years ago, and it grew and it grew and it grew. And I'm going to talk about the process of growth through this specific transit leading us into Aries. So Neptune in Pisces allowed for deep healing, spiritual understanding, allowed for intuition to grow, allowed for greater insight. So we all have our own quest, if you will, or mission or interests, or even personal modalities or techniques or gifts that we can offer the world and others. So you are going to have your own story. Of course, you have your own chart, so that's going to play into it. But on a collective level, this specific transit allowed us to deepen our spiritual understanding. And over time, it grew and it grew and it grew. So I'm going to talk about 2020 because the twos in numerology, this was a big cataclysmic event of 2 and Pisces, or Neptune and Pisces transit, where the twos, where you have double 2s and 0, amplifies the essence of Pisces and Neptune in Pisces. The 2 is generally associated with the moon, just as general reference, but the 2 is the most intuitive and emotional archetype in numerology. So you have a double dose of 2s with the double dose of 0. So the amplification of the 2 becomes heightened with this particular transit, where we're already going into the depths. We're already going into spiritual awakening or understanding or exploration. And then we get hit in 2020 with this extra dose of energy. Now, I'm sure there were other things that happened, and it was definitely an opener of some kind for a lot of us to go through awakenings. A lot of people in humanity had. And I do feel this did allow for an extra boost with regards to that specific shift. So remember, Neptune is still going through Pisces on its way eventually to Aries, which is happening now. And the depth of the 2s is giving us an even greater connection with our emotional self, with our intuition, with our senses. So this Neptune Pisces transit is taking us into the depths. And a lot of us had gone through dark night of the soul, deep transformation. And a lot of us also have questioned, myself included, why am I becoming so sensitive? Why am I so sensitive to everything? Why are my emotions heightened? Why do I feel so destabilized and and all over the place emotionally. Well, that's what I feel this transit has allowed us to work on, and actually also exposed that within ourselves. I've talked about this many times before. When going back into history, we can think of even ourselves, and certainly looking back in time, of how more solid we were as humans, or maybe stoic, or maybe firm or strong. And I'm not saying that we aren't strong. Actually, emotions are very strong. And when we are in our peace and in our authenticity, that's even stronger because it's pure. Back then, sure, we were probably more suppressed, or actually a lot more suppressed. However, our emotions were not so sensitive. We weren't so attuned and so sensitive to ourselves and to life and to relationships. But through sensitivity is where we understand ourself. And that's the way into our unconscious. That is the way into the relationship with our higher self. That is the way into healing. And that is the way into understanding the greater context of life, the universe, etc. So navigating our emotions is extremely important. It is difficult, of course. We can get swept away. We can find ourselves in the downward spiral, but through this work more and more, when we become more conscious and more aware, we can easily navigate our way out. And when we find our way out, we have more information, we have more wisdom, and that is part of this Neptune Pisces transit that we've been in. Now, as we move closer to Aries, this is where things start to get very interesting. This is what piqued my interest. A lot of people, and probably you watching, have gone through a lot of personal change, maybe for some to be a seeker, to be a healer, to inspire others, to heal others. Now, this is the true essence of Pisces, is to heal and to help and to evolve and to nurture through compassion and through healing and through spirituality. So this is a bit of the evolution that happened during this time, but now as it transitions into Aries, it's all about now taking action. Now this is a slow moving transit, remember, slow moving planet. So we have a lot of time to work with. But for some of you out there, you very well could have been feeling the push of maybe urgency or even inner power to all of a sudden rise up and to make a difference and to help others and to heal others. And it could be on a big scale. It could be with your community. It could be just in something you're personally interested in. Therefore, you being in alignment with what you are interested in, what you love, maybe creating something just simply because you love to do it, you could very well inspire others. So there's a whole web of opportunity here that happens when we are in alignment, when we're doing something that is meaningful for us. And some people will have bigger callings. Some people will feel interested in creating something maybe for their own interests, for their own creative pursuits. It's all good. It is the part of the shift that we have gone through. Now, when we go into Aries, it's more about taking action with that. So some of us may have gone through a lot of dark night of the soul experiences, the downward spirals, losing ourselves, shifting career paths, all of a sudden realizing that we're healers or we're seekers or we're teachers or we're in some way here to create a positive impact in the world. But through that process comes fear. This also is going to lead into a video that I'm going to record, a different video on the persecution wound, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. This is the wound that a lot of us carry even in our cellular memory, even energetically, I should say, energetic imprints, soul imprints coming from our family lineage, coming from past life incarnation, coming from a whole web of experiences originating from history, originating from the persecution wound, originating from basically when we were in our truth, maybe as healers, teachers, seekers, whatever the case may be, and getting persecuted for it, getting ostracized for it. And it just grew from there, where it still exists in our society, even in my younger years, and maybe not so much younger, but even maybe 10 years ago, talking about spirituality was a little bit unique or very unique. Maybe some people didn't really think it was a comfortable topic. So it was very sort of in the closet. It was very kept, very secretive in a way. And it's slowly starting to come out. Of course, in around 2020, it started to pick up where more people were talking about it, more people were discovering themselves and finding greater interest in different domains of esoteric, spiritual studies and healing modalities. So this industry, if you want to call it an industry, this realm has exploded, has grown immensely. However, there are still a lot of people who are working through their fear, deep fear. And like I said, this could come from persecution wounds deep within the cellular makeup of their being and soul structure. So when we're moving more into alignment with who we are, when we are adopting these modalities and wanting to create a positive impact, or feeling like it's our soul calling, we are naturally going to be met with fear. And fear can show up in many ways. It can be second guessing ourselves. It can be self-sabotage. It can be distractions. It can come up in moods. It can come up in thoughts. It can show up in many different ways. So fear has many faces and many behavioral patterns attached to it. But I encourage you, if this is resonating with you, well, of course, for one, look at your chart. But second of all, if you feel a calling, look back at what has happened over the last maybe 14 years, or maybe 10, or maybe specifically even 5, because that was the big lead up. We are naturally going to feel ushered into aligning with our agency of self, with maybe leadership opportunities, taking the lead or putting ourselves out there, or even just taking charge for what we feel called to do. And again, it could be something on a more personal, creative level, or something more grandiose, something a little bit more outwardly. So whatever your calling is, you may be faced with certain levels of fear, and pay attention to them. This is going to be the transit that's going to try to push you out. It's going to try to push you out of where you have felt comfortable, or even push you further than where you have already been, what you've already been growing into. And Aries is all about authenticity. It's all about raw power. It's all about taking the lead, taking initiative, and being authentic. And since we are arriving more into our authentic power, a lot of us are rediscovering what that even feels like, what that means on a very deep soul level. And in order to get there, we have to go through the layers. We have to go through many, many layers. It's something I've been working on for years. And it's getting better and better over time. So that's part of the process. And I want to remind you that do not give up on your dreams. Do not give up on your dreams. Follow your heart. And yes, fear will show up, but that's the perfect indicator that you're on the right track. I know it sounds a little bit strange, but it's true. So as Carl Jung has stated, point a man in the direction of his fears, and that is where he needs to go. As soon as we step onto our path and fear shows up, we know we are going in the right direction, especially if it is a calling, especially if it is something we feel very drawn to from a deep place. So this Neptune transit in Aries is going to be until 2039, and this is all about the awakening in action. So the awakening process, and we're all on different paths, and it's still going to be occurring, it's still going to be happening, but the initial big push happened probably around 2020 or so. That was when there was a big shift. And now this is about taking action. This is the awakening in action. This is where you get to apply what you've learned. This is where you get to align with your greatest truth. This is where you get to create something meaningful out of what you have discovered within yourself. And this is where we get to create new systems, models, and pathways. So it's a very, very exciting time. And also, if you consider Pluto in Aquarius with this as well, there's a lot of very positive change that can come out of this. I feel Pluto in Aquarius has a different theme, a different evolutionary process that is going to unearth. This is going to complement it very well. This is all about our uprising. This is all about our transformation, our awakening, moving to a higher level consciousness. The Aries is all about action, inspired action, and leadership, and taking the lead, and our inner truth, our inner warrior. And we get this shift with Aquarius, which is all about the collective. So it's a nice pairing. There are going to be challenges, of course, because we also have to shake away the illusions that we are sometimes obstructed by. So maybe for some of you out there, this is what I experienced the lead up into this particular transit. About several months ago, I started to see things differently. My illusions that I had that I didn't even realize started to shift. I started to see clearer. I started to shake out of some of the illusions that I had been living under. And now looking back, it was quite an illusion that I had been living, or many illusions that I had been living under, right? And so some of that could have lifted for you, and now you may feel clear. You may all of a sudden have more inner truth or a greater direction or more certainty or just a new feeling and a new sense of self about who you are and maybe some of these gifts that you uncovered. Okay, so this is where it gets really exciting. I'm going to go into how this transit is going to impact certain groups. For the seekers and mystics, those who have spent years seeking answers, meditating, or studying spiritual systems may feel a pull to step forward as leaders or teachers, sharing insights in grounded, relatable ways. The shift is going to be from passive seeking to active embodiment of truth. For the healers and empaths, after years of inner healing, you're now being asked to hold space not just for others, but for transformation at a larger scale. Whether through energetic work, somatic tools, or emotional healing, your gifts will become more mainstream, impactful, and needed. The shift went from behind the scenes care to visible contribution and leadership. Those with visions, ideas, and projects that felt too ahead of their time may suddenly feel the energetic green light. This is the age of aligned creators. The shift could have been from self-doubt or dormancy to inspired action and innovation. And finally, the disillusioned and rebuilders, those who've lost trust in institutions, systems, or even spiritual circles, will now have the energy to build something new, not from bitterness, but from awakened clarity. The shift could have included from collapse to conscious reformation. Neptune in Aries invites a collective emergence. The sacred rage, the sovereign self, the awakened heart. This transit signals the fall of savior complexes and the rise of self-empowered changemakers. It also signals less talking about healing, more doing from wholeness. And also no longer waiting for permission, leading as you are. This is going to push a lot of us in a good way. And if this resonates with you, see these pushes, these gentle nudges from the universe as encouragement to be more of who you are, to stand up for what you believe in, and to embody your inner truth. This is all about trusting in the healing that you have already done. And it's time now to take action based on what you have experienced and who you are today, and also who you are growing into as this transit continues to move. So this is not an overnight thing, so do not panic if you feel that this is resonating with you and you feel that you have a calling. It doesn't have to happen tomorrow. It doesn't have to happen this year, but it definitely can be growing and growing over the years to come. So if this does resonate with you, if you feel that this is connecting, you've been on this path, this is something that is going to help you grow spiritually as a leader, as a healer, as an innovator, as a truth seeker, as a teacher, however it lands with you, take your time through this and always, always listen to your inner truth and your heart. There will always be fear attached to things like this. So the fear is going to be your greatest clue as what needs to be looked at, a layer that needs to be healed or dismantled or released for you to step into alignment more with who you truly are, to take the lead and to embody your soul's true calling. Maybe again, to help the world or to show up in community or just to simply align with who you are, which truly is the most important aspect. So when we are in alignment with who we are, when we've worked through our fears, when we've dismantled these layers, and where we feel authentic, real, brave, confident, sovereign, we get to show up more. And this is the push that is going to help us get there. All right, so I hope it resonated. Wishing you all the best during this amazing transit. And I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Take care.